Hello, and welcome to Tuesday DJ Gig Tips, brought to you by Fibo, the music planning app. There's a post that goes around social media quite a bit. I see it every few weeks, and it's always worded a little different. But essentially, it is, can you be too old to DJ? When is it time to retire? Can you age out of this thing? I've stopped responding to them. If they ask, can you be too old to DJ? My simple reply is no. And there's a reason for this. And before I get into it, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things. I'm not suggesting that all older DJs are really good, because some of them are rubbish and they should have gotten out of this business a long time ago. I'm also not suggesting that younger DJs are bad, okay? So please don't be triggered by this. This is all stuff that I've just observed. And truth be told, I've worked my way backwards to come to these conclusions. It's not like I was trying to justify an older DJ's existence. What I've done is I've seen issues or problems, and I've thought to myself, what would be a good resolve? And when I work my way backwards, it usually ends up with the older DJ. And it's by design. It has nothing to do with, like I said, younger DJs being bad. This is something that is more aimed at the bread and butter DJs as well. This is not about DMC champions or any of that stuff, or producers or any of that. I'm talking about those of us who are out at clubs and bars and even mobile gigs. Older has its advantages. And I'm not going to get into all of this, but I did want to talk about just music in general. When I first got into this, I was pretty young, but I had been listening to music my whole life. I was born in 1971, and I was familiar with music that had been made my whole life, right? What I had to worry about was probably about 16 years of highlights with back catalog music for rock and roll. I mean, what happened before rock and roll that was relevant in a DJ's life? Maybe some Glenn Miller, some Frank Sinatra. People weren't running around screaming for ink spots from World War II. We didn't have to worry about like a lot of Cole Porter catalog stuff. We just had to worry about 16 years of rock and roll. Now compare that to a DJ who was born in 1999, all right? Or 2000. They're 21 now if they were born at the beginning of January. They've got to worry about 45 years worth of back catalog rock and roll. That's a lot. And that's not to say that they can't kind of be familiar with it, but to be real proficient in it and to know it like an older DJ is unreasonable for a younger DJ. They didn't see it real time. They've got to go back and listen to this stuff. And I know a lot of you do. My son-in-law, he's 24 years old. We were in the shop last week. And he's got this playlist on his phone. I don't know what he's using for it, but it's something he's put together. And I heard a song I'd never heard before. And I'm like, what is this? It's an old track. Is this P-Funk stuff? I'd never heard it. It was a Bootsy Collins track that he really liked. From the 70s, I had never heard before. So, yeah, I'm not suggesting that younger people cannot check out older music and appreciate it and love it. All I'm saying is that because we were there and we saw it happen in real time and we saw how audience responded to stuff the first time, it kind of gives us a little bit of an advantage. And some of you may be saying, well, that's great if you're playing older music, but I don't play older music. I play new music. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Okay, so I live on a party block. If you've ever been to my house, you know that I'm on a main fairway, the south side of Milwaukee. And there are bars that you can see out my front window. There are 3 you can see. If you stick your head out the window and turn it the other way, you can see a couple more bars. It's a party block. And, up until this whole pandemic thing happened, you couldn't get parking on my street on a Tuesday because these bars were so full. Fast forward to New Year's Eve, and this is what my street looked like at like 11:30. What's going on here? There were shuttle buses bringing people from bar to bar, and I was asking myself, how come people aren't sticking around at these bars? What's going on here? And the only thing I could think of was they must not be doing anything so unique that people want to stick around and check it out. If you're playing new music, exclusively playing new music, it all kind of sounds the same. It's going in cycles. Hip hop hasn't changed much in many years. It just keeps getting recycled and recycled and recycled. There's not a lot of progression in it as far as, what sounds contemporary and what doesn't. You could play a hip hop track from 20 years ago, and if you weren't familiar with it and I told you it was from yesterday, you'd believe me because it just hasn't changed that much. Same thing with rock and pop. I'm talking mainstream stuff. There's progressive stuff out there, but it's not mainstream, right? If all of these younger DJs are out there trying to be cool, new, and hip and playing all of these new tracks back to back, every bar sounding pretty much the same, an older DJ might understand that maybe you need to throw something in there a little different once in a while. They remember these tracks that were really hot, and they remember the responses they got from the tracks the first time around. You're almost like breaking old tracks to new audiences, you know? I mean, if you're good at what you do, you understand what's good and what's not, right? And I'm not suggesting you do old sets. I'm just saying throw an old track in there once in a while, or throw a couple old songs in there once in a while that maybe your audience doesn't know, maybe they do. It doesn't matter. If it's a good track, it's a good track. Something else that I think older DJs understand, more than younger DJs, is that we don't necessarily have to be the center of attention. Younger DJs have come up in the world of the superstars in Vegas, and that's kind of who they aspire to be, the person out there putting on a performance. And that's cool stuff, but us older cats understand that there were times you'd walk into a club and you didn't even know where the DJ booth was. You just heard music. It wasn't a matter of watching them on the turntables. It was a matter of hearing great songs presented in an interesting way. So if you take all of that, yeah, the older DJ actually has an advantage that a younger DJ doesn't have. Yeah, sure, younger people have all kinds of advantages that older people don't have, like youth. They have that. Good looks, But if you want to do this into your 70s, into your 80s, you can absolutely do it. As long as you don't become the jaded old fart. These kids today and this music, I just don't understand it. That's a problem. But if you can recognize tracks that audiences like that are new and incorporate that with tracks that are older and you think your audiences might enjoy, yeah, I think you've got an advantage there. And the other thing is, we live in a very interesting time. I mean, I'm a disabled guy. Having a stroke 10 years ago, when I had it, most people in this industry told me that I couldn't do this anymore because I wasn't physically able to carry my equipment to events. So your wedding days are over, or you're going to have to bring an assistant in for everything you do, which I tried for a year and it was disastrous. So slowly but surely, I found equipment that was smaller and more compact that I could handle one-handed. Fast forward 10 years later, there's all kinds of neat stuff out there. So if you're older and have some kind of physical disadvantage for any reason, there's probably something out there that's still going to keep you on the road. You're not stuck with carrying around 70-pound Bode Anchor Crown Macrotech amplifiers. Powered speakers, lightweight stuff, column arrays. It's easy now. It wasn't 10 years ago. It wasn't 20 years ago. But today, yeah, absolutely. So the physical thing isn't necessarily going to take you out of the game. You might still need help, but it's not going to be this big, crazy, huge rig that you've got to lug around. And if you want to bring in a family member as an assistant, they're not going to break their backs. And you don't have to have this special commercial vehicle to do the bread and butter gigs. Yeah, sure, if you're doing festivals and giant stuff. But if you're doing things like weddings and corporate parties and quinceañeras, the average stuff, you don't need this big commercial vehicle. Your average, everyday truck or SUV is going to be just fine for you. Even a car. You can fit stuff in a car. I've got a friend who's got a Toyota Celica. It's like a clown car. You can put a huge rig in it because the seats fold down. And yeah. So it's better now than it was. It's easier now than it was. as far as the weight of things. But yeah, I don't think there's a retirement age here. You can do this as long as you want to do it, as long as you feel relevant. But like I said, the day that you get jaded might be the day that you might want to think about hanging it up. But if you're not there and you can get your head around that the new music isn't terrible, it's just different, you're going to be okay. I'll tell you how I did it, by the way. Because I was kind of going down that road where I was really getting angry with new music. And it occurred to me that it's not fair to compare some things to other things. It becomes this impossible expectation that you have. I'm not going to argue that the music of the 70s and the 80s was fantastic. Not going to argue that at all. It was. Very complex arrangements and just beautiful songwriting and interesting sounds and such. It's different than what I'm hearing today. But it's like comparing your children, right? If you have more than one child, you don't really have a favorite. Okay, maybe you secretly do, but you don't tell anybody you have a favorite. You're able to find qualities in your other children that you love too, even if you secretly have a favorite. Just do this and love them all equally. That's how I got my head around the music thing. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching this Tuesday DJ Gig Tips that I really hope made sense. Don't think you're aging out of the game, because you're not. As long as you're able to keep one hand in the new and one hand in the old, you're going to have an advantage over the younger guy any day. So, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Practice and enjoy.